Hello everyone and welcome to Linz, a city that is located in the northeast of Austria, and we are here for a very specific reason because we are going to explore the key events, political maneuvers and social unrest that have paved the path for Hitler and transformed him from an obscure political agitator into a dictator that was responsible for one of our history's darkest times. Hitler was born on April 20th in 1889, and he was born in Braunau am Inn, which is a small border town right in front of the border of Germany, but he was born here in Austria. At a very young age, Hitler moved to Linz with his family. And this is also where he attended school for the very first time and spent a lot of years of his childhood and adolescence. But the question is, how did an Austrian actually gain so much power and became the dictator of Germany? Well, let me tell you more about that history. In 1919, Hitler moved to Munich, and there he became part of the NSDAP, which was the Nationalist Socialist German Workers' Party, later on known as the Nazi Party.
At this point, I would like to clarify that Nazi and German is not the same thing. Many people commented below my video about Auschwitz that I should stop hiding the past of my people behind the word Nazi. But Nazi actually stands for National Socialist, which refers to the political party. And while Nazis were Germans, not all Germans were Nazis. Adolf Hitler talked his way to the top of the National Socialist Party. In July 1929, Hitler took over the party chairmanship and determined that the seat of the movement is and always will be Munich. The party grew quickly.
What a lot of people don't know is that there in Munich, Hitler tried to take over power with an attempted coup. That went wrong, and he was on trial for that. He was sentenced to prison for 5 years, but he was already free after just a few months due to good behavior. He was described as a very good and kind man that behaved extremely well, that never drank anything, that didn't smoke, and was always very friendly.
After the failed coup, the NSDAP was initially banned and only re-established in February 1925 under the same name, but with a supposedly legal course in the future.
And then in 1925, Hitler renounced his Austrian citizenship, and he was stateless and identified himself as stateless until he got his German citizenship in 1932. How did he get it? Well, as a public employee in the local government. With that position, he was automatically granted the German nationality and therefore was also able to run for the candidacy as Chancellor in Germany.
In 1931, the NSDAP now had more than 100,000 members and recorded its first electoral success.
In 1933, Hitler was announced the Chancellor of Germany by the German President Paul von Hindenburg. And all of that was completely legal, as Hitler had the German nationality and he was elected by the German people. Now, before you judge, let me explain you the situation back then in Germany so that you understand why people actually voted for Hitler. In the 1920s, Germany was suffering a lot as a country. They have just lost the World War I and therefore they weren't economically stable. Hyperinflation and a huge devaluation of the currency caused a lot of problems amongst the German population. They were suffering from hunger, there was no work, and there was no stability, neither economically nor socially. And therefore, the Germans were looking for a change. And the Nazi Party was still quite new at that time, and they promised them to improve the country and to change it for the better. They talked about the pain points of the German people at that time. And the Germans, when they had to vote, they believed that this was the best solution for them. The Nazi Party gained 33% of the votes, and therefore they were the strongest party at that time. In theory, they should have done a coalition with another party, but Hitler refused to do that. And at some point, Paul von Hindenburg gave in, and as the president of Germany at that time, he announced Hitler to be the Chancellor of the country. He thought he could kind of control Hitler, but obviously the exact opposite was the case. On August 2nd, 1934, after the death of Hindenburg, Hitler announced himself the Führer of Germany, or in other words, the leader of Germany. And with that, the dictatorship in Germany started. Since Hitler has spent 9 years of his childhood here in Linz, it was quite an important city for him. And therefore he wanted Linz to become one of the 5 Führer cities of the Third Reich. The other Führer cities were Munich as the capital of the Nazi movement, Hamburg as the gateway into the world, Nuremberg as the city of the Party Congress, and of course Berlin as the capital of Germany. For these 5 cities, Hitler had planned to completely reconstruct them. He wanted to construct theaters, hotels with his name, bridges, and palaces in those cities. And for that plan, he needed material, especially rocks. And I'm going to upload next week a video that is talking exactly about how he wanted to get this material and rocks with the creation of concentration camps here very close to Linz. So make sure to subscribe to the channel to not miss out on the history of the most cruel concentration camp that existed. Anyways, the plan did not work out as Hitler wanted, but Linz has always stayed a very important city for him. And that became clear as well during a very important announcement that he has made here in the city of Linz. Let's walk a little bit further and then I'm going to talk a bit more about that announcement. This here behind me is the main square of Linz, and what you can see along the main square is the old city hall, which is that building here behind me. That building is an important place of history because here Hitler announced on March 12, 1938, the annexation of Austria to the German Reich. And he did that in front of a huge crowd. He announced it here in Linz before he actually later on announced it in Vienna, the capital of Austria. That is because a few days before he has been in his birth town in Braunau am Inn, which is more or less 2 hours away from Linz, so not too far. What happened during Hitler's dictatorship is no secret. On September 1st, 1939, the World War II started with the invasion of Poland.
In order to secure the supply of Swedish ore, Germany started to occupy Denmark and Norway on April 9, 1940. While Denmark surrendered without fighting back, Norway put up a fierce resistance before capitulating on June 10th. The German attack on the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and France began on May 10th, 1940. After bombing Rotterdam, the Netherlands surrendered on May 15th and Belgium on May 28th. On June 14th, Paris was occupied almost without a fight. Italy, Spain, and Japan became allies. And on July 16, 1940, Hitler ordered preparations for the invasion of England. The battle was opened on August 13th. But after the loss of over 2,200 German aircrafts, the air war against England was stopped in spring of 1941. During the summer of 1941, the Nazi leadership decided to murder all Jews living in the German territory. Hundreds of thousands of Jews from almost all over Europe were now deported to the ghettos of the East. The war against the Soviet Union began on June 22, 1941.
If you want to learn a little bit more about that time in Poland, I actually created a video about the history of Krakow, so make sure to check those out next.
The turning point of the Second World War was in the late fall of 1942 when the Soviets separated the 6th German Army from the rest of the German Army at Stalingrad. Hundreds of thousands of German soldiers and their allies were caught in a deadly trap. Most of them froze to death, starved to death, or died in battles and in Siberian captivity. After the Battle of Stalingrad, the Red Army pushed further and further west, and finally it was able to take Berlin in May 1945. On Hitler's last days, at the end of April 1945, Berlin was in ruins. The battle for the Third Reich's capital has already been decided.
Hitler died on April 30th, 1945 by committing suicide in a bunker of Berlin. They say he committed suicide there, but there are even theories that say that he did not kill himself, that he actually fled to Argentina and continued to live there until his natural death. Nevertheless, these are suspicions.
On May 8, 1945, the USA, Great Britain, France, and the Soviet Union achieved the surrender of Germany, and with that, the ending of World War II.
I would like to hear your thoughts. Leave me your comments in the comment section below, and I hope you've learned something during this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.